Well, it might be a long season for Mark Stoops and the Wildcats because the offense sucks, and there's no other way to put it.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we're going to be recapping Kentucky football's 24-16 win over the Toledo Rockets. Almost blew this one at the end. The offense looked horrible until the fourth quarter. We're going to be breaking it all down, and then at the end of the episode, I'm still going to tell you somehow, some way, some miracle is going to occur this weekend. Kentucky is going to beat Ole Miss. I'm going to give you 3 reasons why later on in the show, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, I would love it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This one's going to be a little bit of a rough episode up until the very end because Kentucky beats Toledo 24-16. The final score here, almost everything that I thought was going to happen and how I explained how I predicted this game to go in the most recent episode of the show. I mean, it happened. Like, to a T, it happened. Kentucky's defensive line dominated. Toledo wasn't able to do anything until late. Kentucky was able to kind of grind this one out. Their defense kind of carried the way. Yes, it's a one-score win. Some things happened in the fourth quarter that you didn't really expect. Toledo finished the day with 270 yards passing. But, overall, if you look at this before you entered, like, the mid-fourth quarter, Kentucky was kind of dominating this one, at least on one side of the ball. But the game is not played on one side of the ball, despite what apparently Mark Stoops and or Kirk Ferentz would like to tell you. Offense has to be played. Points have to be scored. The ball has to be moved. And Kentucky's offense really struggled to do that. A couple of major concerns here, and both of them have to do with the passing game. Zach Calzada, the 7th-year quarterback, finished the day 10 of 23 for 85 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 pick, a quarterback rating of 25.8. He was putrid. Zach Calzada sucked today. There's no other way to put that. It was awful. I think Calzada would say the same as well. Sub 50% completion percentage, did not crack 100 yards against a MAC opponent, and your average was 3.7 yards per attempt. 3.7 yards per attempt. That is never, and I mean ever, going to get it done in the SEC unless you are a triple option offense, which I've got news for you guys. In case you haven't heard, there are no more triple option offenses left outside of what the academies are still running. This was pathetic. The play calling, the passing, the decisions, the route running from the receivers, everything yesterday was pathetic. It was inexcusably bad for a 7th-year quarterback with some experience at receiver. And I say experience as far as age goes. I don't mean experience as far as timeout on the field, because you want to see more from Hardly Gilmore. You want to see more from Jamori Macklin, Fred Ferrier. You've got a couple of other players in here that just, like, Kendrick Law did not make anything happen today. This was a pathetic showing on the offensive side of the ball. You may say, Lance, well, they still ran for 220 and 3 touchdowns. And that is the bright spot right here, but it's still not like anything awe-inspiring, especially when you only scored 24 points. You go and look at how they are operated. 8 of 15 on third down is efficient, but they weren't moving the ball like they should be. They weren't hitting the end zone as often as they should be. This offense was awful. It was awful. And then to have that safety for Zach Calzada, where for reasons unbeknown to both man and people and things beyond this planet, right? Unbeknownst to anyone, Zach Calzada decided to pull the ball out of the belly of the running back and just get smacked in the end zone. What was possibly going through his head in that moment, I will never quite understand. Toledo had just as many first downs as you. They had more total yards than you. They had more yards passing. They were able to put the ball in the end zone through the air, which is something that you should have been able to do. The only reason I think Toledo did not make this even more interesting at the end of the game was because they had 11 total penalties for 93 yards. They shot themselves in the foot at times. Gleason with that early interception, obviously all the different penalties throughout the course of this contest. This was bad. This was bad. This was bad. There is no other way to put it. As I think it was Tyler Thompson put out on social media from KSR. Thompson said that they had more questions. She had more questions coming out of this game than she did going into it, which is kind of where I'm sitting. Why were the receivers the weakest part of the passing attack? Why did Josh Caddis and Willie Rodriguez finish the day with 3 receptions for 43 yards and 2 receptions for 31? Why were they the ones leading after you got a 1,000+ yard receiver from the group of 5? You also have Harley Gilmore back from Nebraska. You have Kendrick Law over from Alabama. What is going on with the play calling as well? Bush has not gotten it done. I mean, there's no other way to put this. It's really hard to get on this podcast and try and be positive because you know who could possibly be watching. But God, there's no other way to put this. This sucked. This absolutely sucked for Kentucky. I don't know where to turn. I don't know how this is going to magically improve. I don't know how the offense is going to either be aesthetically or statistically greatly improved here as the season goes on. Now, I think they can find ways to win games, which is why we're going to talk about the Ole Miss game later in the show. Not a whole lot of great reasons for why it will happen. I mean, there's some interesting stats that I could pull for you, but other than just, I think Kentucky can spring an upset despite all of the odds being stacked against them. But offensively, this was just a putrid performance. And I do not want to hear from any person online that this win should be celebrated because Toledo is some upper echelon MAC school. Are you kidding me? A 1-score win where you could not throw the ball for your life against a MAC school? That is not the standard. That is not the standard. That is not the standard. I do not care when anybody on social media has to say it's saying this win should be celebrated because it's the first win that Kentucky has gotten, and goodness knows how long against an FBS opponent or what. I do not care. This is a 24-point outing where you gave up 16 and 270 yards passing to Toledo of all teams, and you yourself could not crack 90 yards passing. Pathetic. We're going to talk about 2 things here that I have, one on the offense, another praising this defense. I think there are some very positive things to take away from that side of the ball. We'll get to all of those here in just a little bit. Before we do that, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at the Game Cap. Quick question for everybody out there watching the show. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, so I'm talking football here, I'm talking basketball, baseball, what hat would you wear, Kentucky fans? Well, yes, I said hat, and for me, it would be the Game. These hats that the Game has aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles wore back in the 80s and 90s, and guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use code LOCKEDON, you'll get your vintage hat for $16.99, and I actually have a hat here from the Game. If you're watching on YouTube, you could see this in literal 4K. These are very high quality hats. I absolutely love them. Super comfy. And again, $16.99 when you use promo code LOCKEDON. You are not going to find a better quality hat at this price anywhere, period, in the world. Head to thegamecaps.com. That's thegamecaps.com to grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use code LOCKEDON for an exclusive discount because legends wear the Game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I am still very excited, despite the fact that Kentucky could not move the ball worth a rip. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Some of you may be saying that about the Ole Miss game this weekend. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping out at checkout. It sucks, but that's why I use Game Time, the app that actually gives advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time here for the Ole Miss game this weekend. In just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals, things that I would absolutely snag up if I were you guys. I'm talking about your favorite college football games, not just Kentucky, but across the U.S. If you want to go to a group of 5 game, games as low as $25 The app makes it super simple. They've also got zone deals, which I love. You can pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Take the guesswork out of buying your college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, continuing along here on the Sunday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you, recapping Kentucky's season opening win over the Toledo Rockets. 1-0 is better than 0-1, despite some of the issues that I have with Kentucky's offense in this game, mostly due to the inability to create through the air. I am very displeased with how Kentucky's passing attack looked in their season opening win against Toledo. I don't think that that's unfair. I don't think that that's ridiculous. And frankly, if you somehow find some sort of joy in watching Zach Calzada go for 10 of 23 for 85 yards and a pick, I think it's more to do with something being wrong with you rather than something being wrong with me. I'm sorry, but I think a lot of you are agreeing with me. This was not good. The rushing attack, Dante Dowdle, was great. For him to bust that 79-yard run late in the game, I mean, that was huge to try and pull away from Toledo, by the way. Seth McGowan was way more consistent. He had 18 carries for 78 yards. His longest rush was 7, so he was just kind of steady, beating down Toledo chunk after chunk after chunk. Calzada also had a rushing touchdown in this game, which was right there at the goal line to start things. Here's what I wanted to say. The last thing I wanted to say about this offense. I don't know how it improves. Can it improve? I don't know, but I don't know how it gets there. Envisioning that is very tough. There's no way, I said this on Twitter, if Cutter Boley was really pushing for this job, there's no way that he can't perform better than Calzada did on Saturday. I'm not calling for Calzada's job yet. I'm just saying, which it seems like, according to reports, he's going to be on a pretty short leash. Ladies and gentlemen, 85 yards and a pick against Toledo. I mean, you have to be up to the collar now at this point in terms of what your leash is. He has to perform this Saturday against Ole Miss in the first half, and if he does not, it's the Cutter Boley show from here on out. I would 1,000% be calling for it to be the Cutter Boley show, because there's no way, after hearing what we heard out of fall camp, that Cutter cannot perform better than what Calzada did against Toledo of all teams. He has to step it up. I think Calzada would tell you that. Stoops would tell you that. They have to improve. Just because I'm sitting here talking negatively doesn't mean I'm wrong. Doesn't mean it's offensive to hear. It's just reality. It has to be better. Cutter can step in and can perform as well as Zach Calzada if he does not step things up this weekend against the Rebels. If Calzada does not, I should say. However, let's get to the one positive, the one legitimate positive that I had from this game. Kentucky's defensive line is as advertised. I think Kentucky's defense is genuinely as good as it was a season ago, and they dominated this game like we predicted. Alex Safari was incredible in this one. There's a reason earlier this offseason, whenever I was asked, hey, give me Kentucky's 5 best players, Alex Safari was the first guy that I listed. I think he is the best player on this defense. Overall, 13 tackles, 9 of them solo, 1 sack, 2 TFLs here for Safari in the season opener against Toledo. Incredible off the edge. Speaking of the edge, Kentucky's got some dudes. They were sending pressure, and they were getting there on Gleason. 3 sacks total in this game, 2 of which came from Steven Souls Jr., a collective of 6 TFLs. This was really solid stuff here from Kentucky defensively to be able to get after Gleason. JQ Hardaway with a big interception early in the game. I loved what I saw. From this defense. And then you go over to the team stats here. Toledo was not able to run the ball worth a rip. Chip Trainum, former Kentucky running back, former Ohio State running back. This offense had 59 rushing yards on 29 attempts. That's 2 yards per rush. They could not get anything going in this game, which is a big reason why I think Kentucky has a chance against Ole Miss. I'm predicting them to win outright. Despite a lot of what I've said, I still think it's going to happen. But Brad White knows what he's doing. He's not an idiot. He's a legitimately good coordinator, and he is saving this team right now. I think he's going to do it this weekend against Ole Miss. Would love to see it happen. The defense, if Kentucky is going to find a way to make a bowl game, that will be the reason why. It will be players like Alex Safari stepping up week in and week out, stretching this thing out, getting down and grinding out a dirty win, and somehow getting the Wildcats to bowl eligibility. I don't see how they do it. I do not see currently how Kentucky gets to bowl eligibility with the way that they played on Saturday. It was just bad. No other way to put it all around. Despite that, I still think I am predicting Kentucky to beat Ole Miss outright. Does that mean they will get to 6-6? No. I think that they can win this game and literally lose every other SEC contest that they have on their slate, lose to Louisville at the end of the year, and look up and go, oh, we are 3-9, we are 4-8, we are 5-7 even somehow if you pick up another win elsewhere. I don't think that Kentucky is going to make a bowl game as it stands. However, I think they are going to greatly aggravate the Ole Miss Rebels this weekend with a big upset in Lexington. We'll break that down here in literally just a second. Before we do it, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at Rugiet. You've probably heard about Viagra, and maybe you've even tried it, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. It is a next-gen prescription-based treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow, unlike the casual pills that can take hours. Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, wrapping up the Sunday edition of Locked On Kentucky. So, Kentucky didn't look good against Toledo. Straight up. They sucked. There's no other way to put it. 16-24 against a MAC school is not going to cut it any day of the week. However, I think Kentucky is going to find a way to beat the Ole Miss Rebels. Ole Miss will lose to Kentucky this weekend, and Mark Stoops will put together a classic Mark Stoops Kentucky performance. I'll give you 3 reasons why Kentucky will win this game here. First and foremost, it's what I said a minute ago about the defensive front. Kentucky's front 7 is one of the best in the SEC. This team may not be good as a whole, but on the front, I think they're going to be very solid. And the season-opening win against Toledo, Kentucky's defense was very impressive. They held Toledo to, like I mentioned, just 59 rushing yards, 2 yards per carry. If they can replicate that performance against Ole Miss, or even slow Ole Miss's running game down to 3.5 yards per carry, they can put pressure on Austin Simmons and control the flow of the game. Yes, Austin Simmons threw for a bunch of yards and some touchdowns against Georgia State in a game that Ole Miss won 63-7. He also threw 2 terrible picks. If Kentucky can do what they did to Toledo for 3 quarters and make Tucker Gleason beat them with his arm, Ole Miss is going to struggle offensively. They are going to have a hard time this weekend in Lexington. I think that happens. It happened a season ago, and I think that's going to happen again. Second reason here, Kentucky wins as an underdog. Kentucky has 10 wins since 2018 versus ranked opponents. They are 10-12 in that span. Since Stoops arrived in this contest, the average margin of victory in this game versus Ole Miss is 2.5 points. 2.5 points. Neither team, Kentucky or Ole Miss, has won a game since Stoops got here by more than 3 points. Stoops and Brad White are going to control this game, and it's going to shock a lot of people. Kentucky is a 9.5-point underdog as it stands according to FanDuel, as it stands today. Mark Stoops, Brad White are going to shut this Ole Miss offense down, and they are going to spring an upset. They play better as underdogs. We've gotten to see Kentucky stun teams outright whenever nobody believes in them. And the most recent example of that is against Ole Miss last year. where Kentucky just pulled one out of nowhere and shocked the Rebels on the road. They're going to do it again this season. So Kentucky has a strong defensive front. They win as an underdog. And the third reason, the biggest reason why Kentucky is going to win this game, is that they're going to control the time of possession. They're going to make this a Mark Stoops game. They're going to make it as ugly and hard-fought as they possibly can. In the 2024 win over the Rebels, Kentucky dominated time of possession, holding the ball for almost 40 minutes. Kentucky's going to slow this game down, keep it a low-scoring, dirty contest. And as Coach Mark Stoops has described in the past, it will increase their chances of winning if they can do so. Kentucky's going to make this nasty, guys. They're going to make this ugly in Lexington, as ugly as they possibly can. So I think Ole Miss's offense is not going to be as consistent as it was against Georgia State. I think Austin Simmons is going to have some more growing pains. And after saying that he was a young quarterback on Twitter, apparently some people disagree with that. What I don't understand is how a 19-year-old quarterback that has not started an SEC game is not young or inexperienced. Doesn't make sense to me. He's been in the program for 2.5 years. That doesn't mean he has the experience or all of a sudden it's just years beyond his current age. Again, of 19 years old against Brad White's defense when Kentucky is an underdog. This is not looking good for Ole Miss. It just doesn't. It just straight up doesn't. After what happened last year and what he's looking at on paper defensively, this is not a good spot to be in for Ole Miss in week 2. It's just simply not a great idea to travel into Lexington thinking we're just going to waltz in here and magically just walk away with a 15, 16, 17 point win. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. Kentucky will control the time of possession. How will they do it? Well, they'll do it with their new backfield. It's the only good thing that happened offensively against Toledo is that they were able to hit the home run ball a couple of different times with Dante Dowdle, and then Seth McGowan was extremely consistent. The big issue for Ole Miss in their win over Georgia State is they gave up some chunk plays on the ground. Ole Miss gave up 5 rushing plays of 10-plus yards. 2 of those went for 20. 1 of those went for 30, and a 4th went for 49 yards. Okay, they were giving up chunk plays against Georgia State. They're going to give up some against Dante Dowdle and Seth McGowan. That's going to cause a problem. Kentucky's going to lean on them with their offensive line. They're going to slow this game down. They're going to milk the clock, and they're going to come away with at least 3 points every other drive. That's going to be enough. 20 to 24 points is going to be enough to beat this Ole Miss team for a second straight year. I think it's going to happen. The offense may look like crap again, but it's going to be the defense that carries the way against a team Kentucky knows they can beat. Lane Kiffin has not been able to pull away from Mark Stoops in his 4 seasons that he's been here, and he's not going to do it for a 5th. That's my take. Kentucky wins as a massive underdog at home against a ranked Ole Miss squad. A lot of reasons to point to why this one's going to come away with a victory despite playing so poorly against Toledo. I think we may see a similar final score. I think we may see a 24-16 type game again. But I think it happens. I absolutely do. Let me know what you think in the comments below. A lot of you may disagree with this. You may say it's delusional. I don't care. A lot of you would have said it's delusional last year, and you saw what happened. You saw what happened. So why not here? Why not here? That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK, follow me on Twitter at Lance Dawe _, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and of course, God bless.